Outside her door, I paused. There were sounds from within, a hushed voice, movement. I stood there for several seconds, giving them time to sense my presence, to compose themselves. Then I opened the door. They weren't fully undressed, but the situation was unambiguous. Maya's blue dress was pushed up around her waist, her lipstick smeared. Julian's shirt was unbuttoned, his belt undone. They froze when they saw me, a tableau of guilt and interrupted passion. "Alex!" Maya gasped, pushing Julian away and yanking down her dress. "Oh God, Alex, Julian was fumbling with his clothes, his face flushed with alcohol and shame. "Man, this isn't... we didn't..." I held up a hand, stopping their stuttered excuses. The strange calm I'd felt on the stairs had deepened into something almost tranquil. I felt removed from the scene, as if observing it from a distance. "Alex, please say something," Maya pleaded, tears forming in her eyes. I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing both the woman I had loved and the stranger she had become. Or perhaps the stranger she had always been, beneath my careful projections. "I should get back to my guests," I said finally, my voice level. I turned and walked out, closing the door quietly behind me. No raised voice, no dramatic confrontation. Just a quiet exit that somehow felt more final than any shouting match could have been. I always believed Maya and I had the perfect relationship. 3 years together in a downtown apartment with city views, complementary careers, and enough shared interests to keep things interesting without suffocating each other. From the outside, we were that couple everyone aspired to be. Successful, attractive, and seemingly in sync. Maya had just been promoted to senior marketing executive at her firm, and I was leading a major software development team at Horizon Tech. We hosted dinner parties where Maya charmed my colleagues while I made conversation with her marketing friends. We posted carefully curated vacation photos that garnered envious comments. We had sex regularly enough to maintain intimacy without the passion becoming routine. Perfect, right? The morning Director Park called me into his office. I wasn't expecting anything significant. It was a Wednesday in March, still cold enough for a light jacket, but with hints of spring in the air. I had my regular coffee in hand, black with 1 sugar, and had just sent my team the day's objectives before the summons came. Director Park's office always smelled like sandalwood and old books. He was one of those rare executives who still kept physical copies of industry classics on his shelves. At 57, he was what I hoped to be in 28 years, respected, influential, and still passionate about innovation. "Alex, take a seat." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I've been watching your work on the Nexus project. Your approach to the integration issues was unexpected but effective." I nodded, accepting the compliment without false modesty. I knew my worth. "That's why I recommended you for the Tokyo position." The words hung in the air for a moment before I processed them. "Tokyo?" I set my coffee down. "I wasn't aware we had a position open there." Director Park smiled. "That's because it's not open yet. We're expanding the innovation division, looking to bridge Eastern and Western approaches to AI development. Takashi-san specifically asked if we had someone with your skills." Takashi was a legend in our industry. Working directly under him would fast-track my career in ways I hadn't dared to hope for at 29. "It would be a 2-year minimum commitment," Director Park continued. "You'd need to be on site by early summer. The package is substantial. A significant salary increase, housing allowance, quarterly trips home." My mind raced with possibilities. Maya and I had never discussed living abroad. She loved her job, had just received that promotion she'd worked so hard for. Her family was here, her entire network. "This is unexpected," I said finally. "I'll need to think about it." Director Park nodded. "Of course. This isn't just a career decision, it's a life decision. The formal offer won't be extended for another few weeks, so you have time. But keep this confidential for now. We haven't announced the expansion yet." I left his office with my mind spinning, suddenly seeing my life from an unexpected angle. The certainty I'd felt about my future path now wavered. I loved Maya, but I'd been working toward an opportunity like this my entire career. That night I came home to find Maya cooking dinner, music playing softly, her hair tied back in that messy bun she wore when she was relaxed. She looked up and smiled, and I almost told her right then. "How was your day?" she asked, stirring something that smelled like garlic and wine. "The usual." The lie came easily. "How about yours?" She launched into a story about a client presentation, gesturing animatedly with her wooden spoon. I watched her, trying to imagine her reaction to Tokyo. Would she be excited? Resentful? Would she consider coming with me? Would I even want her to uproot her life? "Alex?" Maya was looking at me strangely. "Did you hear what I said?" "Sorry, just tired. The Nexus integration is taking more time than expected." She nodded, but something in her expression shifted. It wasn't the first time in recent weeks I'd mentally checked out during our conversations. "I was saying that Jen and David want us to come over for dinner this weekend. David's sister is visiting from Chicago." "Sounds good," I said, pouring myself a glass of wine. Later that night, as Maya slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, mentally calculating how much time I had to make a decision. I told myself I was waiting for the formal offer before mentioning it to Maya. It made sense not to disrupt our lives for something uncertain. But deep down, I knew I was keeping silent because once I spoke the possibility aloud, everything would change. And some part of me wasn't ready to see how Maya would respond, what her reaction would reveal about us, about our future, about what we truly wanted. 2 weeks after my conversation with Director Park, Maya stood in our kitchen, coffee cup in hand, staring at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "What?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "When did we stop talking, Alex?" I glanced up then, caught off guard by the directness of her question. Maya wasn't typically confrontational, especially not before 8 a.m. "We're talking right now?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "No, we're exchanging information. The dry cleaning is ready. I'll be late tonight. Can you pick up milk?" She set her cup down with more force than necessary. "When did we stop talking about things that matter?" I closed my laptop, giving her my full attention. "Is something wrong?" "That's exactly what I mean," she said, frustration evident in her voice. "You don't even know something's wrong because you haven't been present in weeks, maybe months." I wanted to deny it, but the truth was, I had been distant. The Tokyo opportunity loomed larger in my mind each day, consuming my thoughts when I should have been listening to Maya, when I should have been connecting with her. "I've been busy with work," I said finally. "The Nexus project—" "It's not about being busy," she interrupted. "We've both always been busy. It's about choosing to make time for what matters." Before I could formulate a response, her phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at it, and something in her expression softened. "I have to go. Early client meeting." She hesitated, then added, "Can we talk tonight? Really talk?" "Of course," I said, relieved at the reprieve. "I'll cook." But that night I texted that I needed to stay late at the office. It wasn't entirely untrue. I did have work to finish, but I could have brought it home. I chose not to. 3 days later, Julian came back into our lives like a whirlwind of chaotic energy. He called me on a Friday afternoon, his voice carrying that familiar mix of excitement and desperation. "Alex, my man, guess who's back in town?" Julian and I had been friends since our freshman year of college. He'd been the wild one to my studious focus, the risk-taker to my cautious planning. After graduation, he'd pursued music while I climbed the corporate ladder, but we'd maintained our friendship through sporadic calls and occasional visits. "When did you get back?" I asked, genuinely happy to hear from him. "Last night. The European tour was educational." I could hear the forced optimism in his voice. "Listen, I need a place to crash for a few days, just until I figure things out." I hesitated for only a moment. "Sure, Maya will be glad to see you." That night, Julian arrived with a battered guitar case, a duffel bag, and stories of European mishaps. Maya was immediately drawn in, laughing at his animated tales of playing in half-empty bars in Budapest and sleeping on a ferry to Stockholm. "The reviews were actually pretty good," Julian said, showing Maya an article on his phone. "But the label dropped us anyway. Said we weren't commercially viable." "That's their loss," Maya said fiercely. "Your sound is unique. It just needs the right audience." I watched them from the kitchen as I prepared drinks, struck by how easily they connected. Maya was more animated than I'd seen her in weeks, gesturing enthusiastically as Julian played her snippets of new songs on his phone. "You should show her your promotional materials," I suggested, bringing over the drinks. "Maya's a marketing genius." Julian's eyes lit up. "Would you mind? Our stuff is honestly terrible. I think our last video was shot on someone's iPhone after 6 beers. Maya laughed. "I'd be happy to look. Maybe I can give you some pointers." That night, I lay awake beside Maya, listening to her steady breathing and thinking about the easy way she and Julian had connected. There was nothing inappropriate about it. They were both creative souls, and Maya had always been supportive of my friends. But I couldn't help feeling like I was witnessing something I wasn't part of. Over the next 2 weeks, Julian became a fixture in our lives. What was supposed to be a few days turned into an indefinite stay. I didn't mind, not really. Having him around gave me an excuse to work later, knowing Maya wasn't home alone. They established a routine. Maya would come home from work, and she and Julian would spread marketing materials across our dining table, discussing imagery and messaging strategies for his music. One night, I came home later than usual to find them sitting on the couch, sharing a bottle of wine and laughing. Maya's hair was down, falling around her shoulders in a way I'd always found beautiful. Julian was showing her something on his guitar, their heads bent close together. They looked up when I entered, both smiling, nothing to hide. But I felt it then, a distance that hadn't been there before, a connection between them that I wasn't part of. "Alex, just in time," Julian said. "Maya's been helping me rework my bio. She's brilliant." "She is," I agreed, setting down my laptop bag. "That's why I keep her around." Maya's smile faltered slightly at my joke. Once she would have rolled her eyes and fired back a teasing comment. Now she just turned back to Julian's laptop. "We're almost done," she said. "Have you eaten?" I had, alone at my desk. I didn't mention it. "I'm fine, don't let me interrupt your work." I retreated to our bedroom, telling myself there was nothing to be concerned about. Maya and Julian were friends. Their connection was innocent. Besides, I was the one keeping secrets, wasn't I? Still, when I checked my email that night and found a follow-up from Director Park about the Tokyo position, I felt a strange sense of relief. As if the possibility of leaving justified my emotional distance. 3 weeks before my birthday, I sat in a conference room for my first official interview for the Tokyo position. The video call connected me with Takashi-san and 2 other executives from the Japanese office. I wore my best suit and prepared answers for all the expected questions. "Your reputation precedes you, Chen-san," Takashi said after introductions. "Director Park speaks highly of your technical abilities, but I am curious about your interest in Japanese culture and business practices." I launched into my prepared response about my admiration for Japanese innovation strategies, and my eagerness to learn. What I didn't say was that I'd been studying Japanese in secret for the past month, using an app on my phone during lunch breaks and late nights at the office. The interview went well. Takashi seemed impressed with my answers, and the other executives nodded approvingly throughout. As we concluded, Takashi offered a slight bow. "We will be in touch soon, Chen-san. I believe you would bring valuable perspective to our team." After the call ended, I sat alone in the conference room, a mix of excitement and guilt churning in my stomach. I hadn't told Maya about the interview. I hadn't told her about any of it. Each day that passed made it harder to bring up. That evening, Maya was distant during dinner. Julian had gone out to reconnect with some local musician friends, leaving us alone for the first time in days. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked as she pushed food around her plate. She looked up, seeming surprised by the question. "Now you notice?" Her words stung more than they should have. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said carefully, "that I've been trying to talk to you for weeks, and you've been too busy or too tired or too distracted to notice." "That's not fair," I protested, though I knew it was. Work has been demanding lately. "It's not just work, Alex." She set down her fork. "It's us. Something's changed, and you won't talk about it." I could have told her then. About Tokyo, about my fears, about the distance I'd been creating as a preemptive defense against her potential rejection of my opportunity. Instead, I deflected. "Maybe you're reading too much into things. We're both busy. It happens." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Julian said you might be stressed about your birthday. About turning 30. The mention of Julian sent an unexpected spike of irritation through me. "You and Julian talk about me often?" "He's your friend," she said, looking confused by my tone. "He cares about you." "And you?" I asked, the words coming out more harshly than I intended. "Do you care?" Maya pushed back from the table, her expression a mix of hurt and anger. "I don't even know how to respond to that. Of course I care. I've been trying to reach you for weeks, but you're never really here, even when you're sitting right in front of me." She stood up, leaving her half-eaten dinner. "I'm going to take a bath." After she left, I sat alone at the table, replaying her words. She was right, of course. I had been absent, mentally if not physically. But instead of bridging that gap, I was widening it with my silence about Tokyo. Later that night, my phone buzzed with an email from Director Park. "Tokyo team impressed. Final interview scheduled for the week after your birthday. Formal offer likely to follow. Congratulations, Alex." I stared at the screen, feeling the future rushing toward me faster than I was prepared for. In the bathroom, I could hear Maya moving around, getting ready for bed. In the guest room, Julian's guitar case leaned against the wall, a visual reminder of his presence in our lives. The next morning, a video call notification from Ella appeared on my laptop. I hadn't spoken to my childhood friend in weeks, though we usually caught up monthly. I accepted the call, grateful for the distraction. Ella's face appeared on screen, her apartment in London visible in the background. Despite the early hour there, she looked fully alert, her psychologist's observant gaze assessing me immediately. "You look terrible," she said by way of greeting. I laughed despite myself. "Good to see you too, Elle." "I'm serious. You've got that same look you had during finals week senior year, like you're running on caffeine and stubbornness." "I'm fine," I insisted. "Just busy with work." Ella tilted her head, unconvinced. "How's Maya?" The simple question shouldn't have made me pause, but it did. "She's good, busy too." "Alex?" Ella's tone shifted to what I called her therapist voice. "What's going on?" Perhaps it was the distance between us, or the fact that Ella had known me since we were children, But I found myself telling her everything. About Tokyo, about my silence, about Julian's return, and the strange tension in the apartment. Ella listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. When I finished, she sighed. "You're creating a dangerous distance, Alex. Not just by keeping secrets, but by emotionally checking out while you decide what you want." "I'm not." "You are," she cut me off gently. "You're protecting yourself by pulling away before Maya can reject your Tokyo plans. But in doing so, you're making a decision for both of you without giving her a choice." Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. "And Julian," she continued, "you're using his presence as another buffer, another excuse to avoid real conversation with Maya." "That's not true," I protested, though part of me wondered if it was. "Isn't it? You say you've noticed them growing closer, but you haven't addressed it. You're working late instead of coming home. You're creating the perfect conditions for emotional infidelity, if not more." I flinched at her bluntness. "Maya wouldn't—" "Everyone has limits, Alex. Everyone needs connection. If you won't provide it, she'll find it elsewhere. That's not a judgment. It's human nature." After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, turning Ella's words over in my mind. Had I been sabotaging my relationship with Maya? Was I subconsciously creating a situation that would make leaving easier? That night, I came home earlier than usual, intending to talk to Maya properly. But when I arrived, the apartment was empty except for a note on the counter. "Helping Julian with his portfolio photos. Don't wait up. M." I stared at the note, feeling a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Once again, I'd been spared the difficult conversation. Once again, Maya was with Julian instead of me. I told myself it was innocent. I told myself I had no right to be jealous when I was the one keeping secrets. But as I went to bed alone that night, I couldn't help wondering if I was losing Maya before I'd even made my decision about Tokyo. 7 days before my 30th birthday, I finalized plans for a party at our favorite rooftop bar. Maya had initially suggested hosting at our apartment, but I pushed for the neutral territory of the bar. Somewhere public, somewhere I could control the variables, somewhere with an easy escape if needed. The Tokyo team had confirmed our final interview for the following week, and the reality of my imminent decision loomed larger each day. I'd drafted and deleted dozens of messages to Maya, trying to find the right words to explain my opportunity, my hesitation, my fear of her reaction. But every time I saw her, something held me back. Sometimes it was her obvious distraction, her mind clearly elsewhere. Sometimes it was Julian's presence, always there with his easy laugh and creative energy that complemented Maya's in ways my analytical mind never had. 3 nights before my birthday, Maya cornered me in our bedroom as I changed out of my work clothes. "We need to talk, Alex." Her voice was steady, but I could see tension in the set of her shoulders. "About us. About what's happening." I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly tired. "What do you think is happening?" She sat beside me, leaving careful space between us. "I think we're drifting apart. I think you're hiding something. I think we haven't really seen each other in months." I looked at her then, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. There were new shadows under her eyes, a tightness around her mouth that hadn't been there before. "Maya, My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Director Park's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then reached for it. "You should get that," Maya said, standing up. "It's clearly important." "Maya, wait." But she was already walking out of the room, closing the door with a quiet click that somehow felt more final than a slam. I took the call, discussing final details for the Tokyo interview while watching Maya's shadow move past our bedroom door. When I emerged 30 minutes later, she was gone, and Julian informed me she'd gone to her sister's house for the night. "She seemed upset," he said, watching me carefully. Everything okay with you guys? I shrugged, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. Just stressed with work. Julian nodded slowly. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about the birthday party. Maya mentioned you might need help with some of the arrangements. I'd be happy to pick up the cake or help with decorations. That's not necessary, I said, perhaps too quickly. Maya and I have it handled. Right. Julian cleared his throat. Well, the offer stands. I know things have been tense lately. I looked at him then, wondering how much Maya had shared with him. Tense? Julian shifted, suddenly interested in his phone. You know, with work and everything, Maya mentioned you've both been busy. I nodded, letting it go. Thanks for the offer. I'll let you know if we need help. That night I lay awake in our empty bed, replaying the moment Maya had tried to talk to me, the moment I'd chosen Director Park's call instead. Was I sabotaging us deliberately? Was I creating reasons to leave? The next day Maya returned, but maintained a careful distance. She focused on birthday preparations, coordinating with the bar, ordering my favorite cake. We moved around each other like strangers, our conversations limited to logistics and pleasantries. 2 nights before my birthday, I came home late to find Maya sitting alone on our balcony, a glass of wine in hand. Even from the doorway, I could see the slight shake of her shoulders, the way she quickly wiped her face when she heard me. She'd been crying. I stood frozen, watching her compose herself, straighten her spine, prepare to face me with a smile that wouldn't reach her eyes. I should have gone to her then. I should have sat beside her, taken her hand, finally told her about Tokyo and all my fears about what it might mean for us. Instead, I quietly retreated to our bedroom, pretending I hadn't seen her moment of vulnerability, pretending I didn't know what it meant. The day before my birthday, the Tokyo office sent their formal interview confirmation along with a detailed agenda. The email included preliminary housing options and a proposed compensation package that exceeded even my optimistic expectations. Reading it, I felt a surge of excitement that briefly overshadowed my guilt about Maya. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. This was what I'd been working toward for years. Surely Maya would understand that once I explained it to her. Surely we could find a way to make it work. That night, as we prepared for bed in silence, I made a decision. I would tell her everything after the birthday party. I would lay out the Tokyo opportunity, explain my fears, ask her what she wanted. We would face it together, whatever it turned out to be. But as Maya turned away from me in bed, the space between us feeling wider than the inches it actually was, I wondered if I'd already waited too long. If the damage I'd done by distancing myself was already irreparable. Beside me, Maya's breathing evened out in sleep. Outside our window, the city hummed with nightlife. In the guest room, Julian was probably still awake, working on his music or texting friends. And I lay awake, caught between guilt about the past and anxiety about the future, unable to be present in the moment that might have still saved us. My 30th birthday arrived with picture-perfect weather, clear skies, mild temperature, the kind of spring day that seems designed for celebration. I woke before Maya, watching her sleep for a moment before silently slipping out of bed. The distance between us felt tangible now, a presence in our apartment as real as the furniture. I made coffee and stood on our balcony, mentally rehearsing what I would say to her after the party. How I would explain Tokyo, my silence, my fears. I'd tell her tonight, once the guests were gone. We would finally have the conversation we should have had months ago. Maya emerged from our bedroom in a silk robe, her eyes still heavy with sleep. She hesitated when she saw me, then offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Happy birthday," she said, pouring herself coffee. "Thanks," I replied, unsure what else to say. Once, she would have woken me with kisses, with plans for the day, with the genuine excitement she brought to celebrations. Now we stood awkwardly in our kitchen, like actors who had forgotten their lines. "The bar called to confirm everything for tonight," she said after a moment. 7 o'clock. About 40 people have RSVP'd. "Sounds perfect. Thank you for arranging it." She nodded, then seemed to gather herself. "Alex, I was thinking after the party, maybe we could—" A knock at the door interrupted her. Julian emerged from the guest room at the same moment, still in his pajama pants, hair rumpled from sleep. "That must be Zoe," Maya said, setting down her coffee. She texted that she'd be here early to help set up. My sister had always had impeccable timing. In this case, impeccably bad. I opened the door to find Zoe standing there with a gift bag and a wide smile that faltered slightly when she saw my expression. "Happy birthday, big brother," she said, hugging me tightly. Zoe was 24, but had the old soul wisdom that came from growing up too fast after our parents' messy divorce. Unlike me, she'd processed that trauma through extensive therapy rather than emotional compartmentalization. "You look like hell," she whispered in my ear before pulling back from the hug. "Good to see you too," I replied dryly. Zoe stepped into the apartment, her eyes taking in the scene, Maya standing uncomfortably in the kitchen, Julian hovering in the hallway, the palpable tension in the air. "Maya," she said brightly, moving to hug her. "Need help with anything for tonight?" "Actually, yes," Maya said, seeming relieved to have something concrete to focus on. "I need to pick up the cake and some last-minute decorations." "I can go with you," Julian offered immediately. I noticed the quick look that passed between them. Maya's hesitation, Julian's reassurance. When had they developed their own silent language? "Perfect," Zoe said before I could object. "That leaves me and the birthday boy to catch up." After they left, Zoe wasted no time. "What the hell is going on? The temperature dropped about 10 degrees when I walked in." I sighed, sinking onto the couch. "It's complicated." "Isn't it always?" She sat beside me. "Talk to me, Alex." I told her about Tokyo, about keeping it secret, about the growing distance between Maya and me. I didn't mention my suspicions about Maya and Julian. Saying them aloud would make them too real. Zoe listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to exasperation. "Let me get this straight," she said when I finished. "You've been offered your dream job in Tokyo, you haven't told your girlfriend of 3 years, and you've basically been emotionally checking out of your relationship while you decide what to do?" Put like that, it sounded even worse than it was. I was waiting for the right time. "And when would that be? After you've packed your bags?" She shook her head. "Alex, you're doing exactly what Dad did, making unilateral decisions and expecting everyone else to adapt." The comparison stung. Our father had announced his departure from our family with the same clinical detachment he brought to his surgical practice. A decision already made, not up for discussion. "This is different," I insisted. "I'm going to talk to Maya about it." "When?" Zoe challenged. "Tonight. After the party." Zoe looked skeptical, but didn't push further. "Just don't wait too long. Maya deserves better than that." The party started at 7. The rooftop bar transformed with string lights and elegant decorations. Maya had clearly put significant effort into creating the perfect atmosphere. I watched her move among the early arrivals, her blue dress catching the fading sunlight, her smile practiced and perfect. She was drinking more quickly than usual, a glass of champagne always in hand. Julian stationed himself near the bar, playing the role of attentive friend. He greeted guests, made introductions, kept an eye on Maya. Several times I caught him watching me with an unreadable expression. Zoe stayed close, observing everything with the perceptive gaze that always made me feel transparent. "Maya's on her 4th glass," she murmured at one point, "and Julian hasn't left her side all night." "They've become good friends," I said, trying to sound casual. "Julian's been staying with us while he gets back on his feet." Zoe raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment further. As the night progressed, the party took on a surreal quality. Friends from work, college acquaintances, neighbors, all wishing me well, all oblivious to the undercurrents of tension. I moved through conversations on autopilot, accepting congratulations, discussing work, making jokes at appropriate moments, all while watching Maya drift further away, glass by glass, laugh by laugh. Around 9, my phone buzzed with an email. I stepped away from the crowd to read it. "Alex, the Tokyo team has unanimously approved your candidacy. We're pleased to formally offer you the position of lead developer for the AI Integration Division, effective July 1st. The detailed contract will follow, but I wanted to personally congratulate you on this well-deserved opportunity. We'll schedule a call next week to discuss next steps and your relocation timeline. Regards, Director Park." I stared at the screen, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. Pride, excitement, dread. The moment of decision had arrived, forcing my hand in ways I hadn't anticipated. I needed to tell Maya now, before someone else congratulated me, before the news spread. I looked up, scanning the crowd for her familiar form. My eyes moved past clusters of laughing friends, past the bar where Julian had been stationed all evening. Neither was anywhere to be seen. A cold weight settled in my stomach. I moved through the party, nodding at greetings but not stopping, searching each corner of the rooftop. Nothing. "Have you seen Maya?" I asked a coworker from her firm. "I think she went downstairs," he replied, slightly too quickly, not quite meeting my eyes. "Said she needed something from the office." The bar was on the top floor of the building where Maya worked. Her office was just 2 floors below. I thanked him and headed for the stairs, a strange calm settling over me. Part of me already knew what I would find, had perhaps known it was coming for weeks. As I descended, I passed 2 of Maya's colleagues from the marketing department, their conversation stopping abruptly when they saw me. "Alex, happy birthday," one of them said too brightly. "Great party." I nodded, continuing past them, but not before catching a fragment of their whispered exchange. "Can't believe they would..." His birthday of all days. The marketing department was dark when I entered, the workday long over, but a faint light spilled from beneath Maya's office door at the end of the hallway. I moved toward it slowly, each step deliberate, my heartbeat steady in my ears. Outside her door, I paused. There were sounds from within, a hushed voice, movement. I stood there for several seconds, giving them time to sense my presence, to compose themselves. Then I opened the door. They weren't fully undressed, but the situation was unambiguous. Maya's blue dress was pushed up around her waist, her lipstick smeared. Julian's shirt was unbuttoned, his belt undone. They froze when they saw me, a tableau of guilt and interrupted passion. "Alex!" Maya gasped, pushing Julian away and yanking down her dress. "Oh God, Alex, Julian was fumbling with his clothes, his face flushed with alcohol and shame. "Man, this isn't... we didn't..." I held up a hand, stopping their stuttered excuses. The strange calm I'd felt on the stairs had deepened into something almost tranquil. I felt removed from the scene, as if observing it from a distance. "Alex, please say something," Maya pleaded, tears forming in her eyes. I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing both the woman I had loved and the stranger she had become. Or perhaps the stranger she had always been, beneath my careful projections. "I should get back to my guests," I said finally, my voice level. I turned and walked out, closing the door quietly behind me. No raised voice, No dramatic confrontation. Just a quiet exit that somehow felt more final than any shouting match could have been. I returned to the party, accepting a drink from the bartender with a steady hand. The rooftop continued to pulse with conversation and laughter, the celebration of my 30th year on Earth proceeding without a hitch. No one seemed to notice anything amiss, or if they did, they were too polite to mention it. Zoe found me by the railing, overlooking the city lights. "You okay? You disappeared for a while." "I'm fine," I said, taking a long swallow of whiskey. "Just needed some air." She studied my face, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Did something happen?" "Nothing unexpected." I finished my drink and signaled for another. "Would you mind making sure people are enjoying themselves? I need a minute." Zoe hesitated, clearly concerned, but nodded and moved away. I stood alone, watching the party as if through glass, feeling strangely untethered from the scene. 3 drinks later, Maya and Julian returned separately. Maya's makeup had been freshly applied, but her eyes were red-rimmed and wary. Julian kept to the edges of the party, his usual confidence replaced by awkward hovering. Both kept glancing at me, waiting for the explosion that never came. A college friend approached me, clapping me on the shoulder. "30 looks good on you, man. What's next for the great Alex Chen?" I smiled, the alcohol softening the edges of my pain. "Actually, I've got some news. I just accepted a position in Tokyo. I'll be moving there in July." His surprise was genuine. "Dude, seriously? Does Maya know?" Before I could answer, Maya appeared at my side, her face pale. "What did you just say?" I turned to her, meeting her gaze directly for the first time since finding her with Julian. "I've been offered a position in Tokyo, lead developer for Horizon's new AI division there. I'll be leaving in July." Maya stared at me, shock and hurt battling for dominance in her expression. "And when were you planning to tell me this?" "Tonight, actually. After the party." The irony wasn't lost on me. But plans change. Our exchange had attracted attention. Conversations around us quieted as friends sensed the tension. "Alex, can we talk about this privately?" Maya asked, her voice strained. "There's nothing to discuss," I replied evenly. "I've made my decision." Julian approached then, his expression a mix of guilt and concern. "Alex, man, about what happened?" "Julian!" I cut him off with a single word. "There's nothing to say." He flinched at my tone. "Look, I know you're angry, you." "I'm not angry," I said. And it was mostly true. What I felt was beyond anger, a cold, clarifying disappointment that left no room for rage. "I'm just done." Maya touched my arm, her fingers trembling slightly. "Alex, please, can we just—" I stepped back, removing myself from her reach. "I'm going to make a toast," I announced, turning away from both of them. I moved to the center of the rooftop, tapping a spoon against my glass to get everyone's attention. The party quieted, all eyes turning to me. I saw confusion on some faces, concern on others. Zoe was watching me carefully from the side, clearly worried about what I might say. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady despite the alcohol. "Turning 30 is supposed to be a milestone, the entrance to real adulthood, I guess, and it seems fitting that it's also bringing some major changes in my life." I paused, scanning the crowd. Maya had moved to stand beside Zoe, her expression pleading. Julian hovered at the edge of the gathering, looking like he wanted to disappear. "I've accepted a position with my company's Tokyo office," I continued. "I'll be moving to Japan in July for at least 2 years. It's an incredible opportunity that I couldn't pass up." Murmurs spread through the crowd. I saw questioning glances directed at Maya, whose face had gone completely white. "So, thank you all for celebrating with me tonight," I concluded, raising my glass. "To new beginnings." The toast was met with hesitant congratulations, the crowd sensing undercurrents they didn't fully understand. As people returned to their conversations, now buzzing with this new information, I made my way to the bar for another drink. The rest of the party passed in a blur of well wishes and questions I deflected with practiced ease. I maintained a smile, a joke, a light tone, all while feeling absolutely nothing beneath the surface. Maya attempted to approach me several times, but I managed to stay surrounded by others, never allowing her a private moment. Julian tried once more, cornering me near the restrooms. "Alex, you have to let me explain," he began, his voice low and urgent. "Do I?" I asked coolly. "I'm pretty sure I saw everything I needed to see." "It wasn't planned," he insisted. "We were both drunk and things just—" "Save it." I cut him off again. "Whatever justification makes you feel better about fucking your best friend's girlfriend, go ahead and tell yourself that. Just don't expect me to listen to it." I pushed past him, returning to the party with my mask of calm firmly in place. By midnight, guests began to leave, offering congratulations on both my birthday and my new position. No one mentioned the obvious tension, the conspicuous distance between Maya and me. Zoe was the last to leave, pulling me aside by the elevators. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice low. "Ask Maya," I replied. "Or Julian. I'm sure they'd be happy to explain." Her eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. "Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. It's clarifying, actually." I kissed her cheek. "I'll call you tomorrow." As the elevator doors closed on her worried face, I steeled myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. It was time to end this. All of it. Maya was waiting in the living room when I returned to our apartment. She'd changed out of her party dress into sweatpants and a t-shirt, her makeup washed off, her hair pulled back. She looked younger, vulnerable, reminding me of the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago. Julian was nowhere to be seen. "I asked him to leave," Maya said, as if reading my thoughts. "He's staying at a hotel tonight?" I nodded, moving to the bar cart to pour myself another drink. "Thoughtful of him?" "Alex, please." Her voice cracked slightly. "Can we talk about this?" "Which part?" I asked, keeping my back to her as I poured whiskey. "The part where you slept with my friend, or the part where I'm moving to Tokyo?" "Both. Either—" I heard her stand up, move closer. "You can't just announce something like that without any discussion." I turned to face her, drink in hand. "The way you discussed sleeping with Julian before doing it?" Maya flinched. "That's not fair. What happened with Julian was a mistake, a terrible, drunk mistake that I regret more than anything." "And yet it happened." "Yes, it happened." Her voice rose with frustration. "I'm not denying that. I'm not trying to justify it. But it didn't happen in a vacuum, Alex." I took a slow sip of my drink. "Meaning?" "Meaning you've been gone for months." Tears filled her eyes. "Not physically, but in every way that matters. You stopped talking to me, stopped seeing me. It was like living with a ghost." "So you sought comfort in Julian's arms?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "I didn't plan it," she said quietly. "We were both feeling abandoned by you. We both had too much to drink. One conversation led to another, and then—" She broke off, wiping at her tears. "I'm not defending what we did. It was wrong, unforgivable. But I'm asking you to see how we got here." I set down my glass, suddenly tired of the performance, of the careful control I'd been maintaining for hours. "I was going to tell you about Tokyo tonight," I said after a moment. "After the party. I've known about the possibility for months, but I couldn't find the right way to tell you." Maya stared at me, disbelief clear on her face. "Months? You've been planning this for months and never said a word." "I wasn't planning it," I clarified. "I was considering it. There's a difference." Not to me. Not when you're making decisions that affect both our lives. Her voice rose again, anger cutting through her tears. Do you have any idea what it's like to realize the person you love has been living a double life, making plans you know nothing about? The irony of her accusation wasn't lost on me. I think I got a pretty good idea tonight. Maya's face crumpled. That's not the same thing and you know it. Isn't it? I moved toward her, stopping just out of reach. You talk about me being absent, about me withdrawing. But what about you, Maya? How present have you been? How quickly did you turn to Julian when things got difficult? That's not fair, she protested. I tried to talk to you so many times. I tried to reach you. And when that didn't work, you decided to sleep with my friend? The calm I'd maintained all evening was fraying, anger seeping through. On my birthday? It wasn't about your birthday. It wasn't about hurting you. It was a mistake, a stupid, awful mistake that happened because we were both lonely and drunk and hurt. Maya's tears were flowing freely now. I love you, Alex. Despite everything, I love you. And you were just going to leave without even discussing it with me. Her words hit home, a truth I'd been avoiding. I had been planning my escape, creating distance to make leaving easier. Would you have come with me? I asked suddenly. If I'd told you about Tokyo when I first found out, would you have considered coming with me? Maya faltered, caught off guard by the question. I don't know. Maybe. If you'd asked me then, before everything fell apart. Before you slept with Julian, you mean? Before you checked out of our relationship, she countered. Before you started making plans that didn't include me. We stood in silence for a moment, the truth of our mutual betrayals hanging between us. I had emotionally abandoned her long before she physically betrayed me. We had both failed, in different but equally devastating ways. A knock at the door broke the tension. Maya looked surprised, then resigned. That's probably Julian, she said quietly. He texted that he forgot his medication. Of course he did, I muttered, moving to open the door. Julian stood in the hallway, looking miserable and uncertain. I just need to grab my pills, he said, not meeting my eyes. Then I'll go. I stepped aside to let him in. He moved quickly toward the guest room, clearly trying to minimize his presence. Maya watched him, then turned back to me. Alex, please, can we try to work through this? Both of us made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but that doesn't mean we have to throw away 3 years. Julian emerged from the guest room, a small toiletry bag in hand. He hesitated, looking between us. I heard what you said at the party, he said finally, addressing me directly. About Tokyo. Were you really not going to tell anyone? I was going to tell Maya tonight, I replied, irritation flaring. Not that it's any of your business. It affects her, Julian said, a hint of defiance in his tone. It affects your relationship. Our relationship, I said coldly, is no longer your concern, if it ever was. Look, what happened tonight was wrong, Julian continued, looking at Maya, then back to me. We both know that. We made a terrible mistake. But you can't just make life-changing decisions without consulting the person you're supposed to love. Don't, I warned, anger rising. Don't you dare try to equate what I did with what you did. I'm not equating them, Julian insisted. I'm saying you both hurt each other. Maybe there's still a way to fix this. There's not, I said firmly, turning back to Maya. You were right before. We've been drifting apart for months. Tonight just made it impossible to ignore anymore. Maya shook her head, fresh tears spilling. It doesn't have to be. We can get counseling. We can start over. Please, Alex. Julian took a step toward me. Man, at least think about it. Don't throw away everything you've built together over one mistake. Something snapped inside me at his presumption. One mistake? You fucked my girlfriend on my birthday and you're calling it one mistake? That's not what Julian began, but I cut him off. Get out, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Both of you can stay here until I leave for Tokyo. I'll be at a hotel. I moved to our bedroom, pulling a suitcase from the closet and beginning to pack essentials. Maya followed me, hovering in the doorway. Alex, please don't do this, she pleaded. Let's at least talk about it. We just did, I replied, not looking up from my packing. There's nothing left to say. So that's it? 3 years and you're just walking away? I paused, meeting her gaze. You walked away first, in all the ways that matter. Julian appeared behind her, his expression troubled. Alex, this is crazy. You can't just leave like this. Watch me? I zipped the suitcase and lifted it off the bed. I'll come back for the rest of my things later this week. I moved past them into the living room, gathering my laptop, phone charger, wallet. So you're just running away? Maya's voice had hardened, anger replacing tears. Taking the easy way out? Easy. I laughed without humor. None of this is easy, Maya, but it is necessary. You're a coward, she said, following me to the door. You were looking for an excuse to leave, and now you have one. You're just like your father. The comparison stung, just as it had coming from Zoe, but this time I didn't deny it. Maybe I am, I conceded, hand on the doorknob, but at least I'm honest about it now. I left them standing in our apartment. Maya with tears streaming down her face, Julian looking lost and guilty. As the door closed behind me, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. The life I had carefully constructed was over, collapsed beneath the weight of mutual betrayals and unspoken truths. In the elevator down to the lobby, I called a hotel and booked a room. Then I texted Director Park. I accept the Tokyo position. Please send the contract details when ready. I can start earlier than July if needed. His reply came almost immediately, despite the late hour. Congratulations, Alex. We'll expedite the paperwork. Take care of yourself. That last line made me wonder how much he had guessed about my personal situation. Had he recognized in me the same need to escape that had perhaps driven his own career? It didn't matter now. Tokyo was no longer just an opportunity. It was a lifeline, a way out of the wreckage I'd helped create. As my taxi pulled away from the building I'd called home for 3 years, I didn't look back. Whatever future awaited me in Tokyo, it had to be better than the hollow shell of a relationship I was leaving behind. Tokyo in autumn was nothing short of breathtaking. The city parks transformed with brilliant red and gold foliage, creating pockets of serenity amid the urban landscape. I'd developed a routine of visiting Yoyogi Park on Sunday mornings, sitting on the same bench, drinking the same black coffee from the same vending machine. There was comfort in the consistency, in knowing exactly what to expect. My apartment overlooked a quiet street in Nakameguro, small by American standards but perfect for a single occupant who spent most of his time at work. I'd decorated minimally, a few framed photographs of Tokyo landscapes I'd taken myself, some essential furniture, and a collection of books I was slowly working through. Nothing that couldn't be packed up quickly if needed. Old habits. Professionally, things couldn't have been better. Takashi-san had become both mentor and friend, guiding me through the complexities of Japanese business culture while valuing my technical expertise. Our AI integration project was months ahead of schedule, earning recognition from headquarters and creating new opportunities for expansion. On paper, my life looked perfect. Successful career, comfortable living situation, newfound appreciation for Japanese cuisine and culture. The reality was more complicated, as my therapist Keiko gently reminded me each week. "You've built an impressive external structure," she said during our session that morning. but we need to continue working on what's happening inside the walls. Keiko was in her 50s, with a calm demeanor and uncanny ability to see through my deflections. I'd started therapy a month after arriving in Tokyo, initially to help with cultural adjustment. We both knew that was a convenient fiction. I dreamt about the birthday party again, I admitted, the moment I opened the door and saw them together. Keiko nodded. And how did you feel in the dream? The same as I felt that night. Calm, detached, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. That dissociation served you well in the moment, she observed. It protected you from immediate pain. But 6 months later, are you ready to feel what you couldn't allow yourself to feel then? I shifted uncomfortably in my chair. I'm not sure there's any point. It's over. I've moved on. Keiko's smile was gentle, but knowing. Have you? After therapy, I returned to my apartment to find an email from Zoe waiting in my inbox. My sister and I had maintained regular correspondence since I left, her updates providing my only real connection to the life I'd left behind. Alex, hope this finds you well. Tokyo looks amazing in your photos. Those maple trees. Mom's asking if you're coming home for Christmas, but I told her it's probably too soon after your move. Let me know if I guessed right. Thought you should know. Maya and Julian's thing imploded spectacularly about a month ago. According to mutual friends, they tried to make it work, but the guilt was too much. Julian moved to Austin to join some indie band, and Maya's throwing herself into work as usual. Not telling you this to stir up old feelings, just keeping you in the loop. You okay? Love you, Zoe. I read the email twice, trying to identify the emotion rising in my chest. It wasn't satisfaction or vindication, as I might have expected. It was, surprisingly, relief. As if some tightly wound spring inside me had finally loosened. I hadn't wanted Maya and Julian to find happiness together. I hadn't wanted them to fail either. I'd simply wanted not to care one way or the other. Perhaps this relief meant I was getting closer to that goal. I typed a quick response. Zoe, thanks for the update. Not surprised about Maya and Julian. Their foundation wasn't exactly built on mutual respect or trust. I'm doing fine. Project is going well, and Tokyo continues to be the right decision for me. Tell Mom I'm not sure about Christmas yet, but we'll let you know soon. Miss you too, Alex. I hesitated before hitting send, then added, P.S. I'm dating again. Nothing serious, just dinner here and there. It's different here, slower, more deliberate. I think I needed that. The addition was true, if somewhat understated. I had gone on several dates in the past 2 months, mostly with expats or internationally minded Japanese women I'd met through work or language exchange groups. Nothing had progressed beyond a third date. But I was approaching these interactions with a new awareness, conscious of my patterns of emotional withholding. After sending the email, I checked my calendar for the coming week. A meeting with Director Park's name caught my attention. He would be in Tokyo for quarterly reviews, his first visit since I'd relocated. The prospect of seeing him stirred complex emotions. He had been instrumental in my escape, however unintentionally. I wondered what he would make of the person I was becoming in this new environment. My phone chimed with a text from Hana, a translator I'd been seeing casually for a few weeks. She was suggesting dinner at a new izakaya in Shibuya. I found myself smiling as I typed a response, accepting her invitation. For the first time in months, the prospect of spending an evening with someone else didn't feel like an obligation or a distraction. It felt like a genuine desire for connection. Later that night, as Hana and I shared small plates of grilled skewers and sipped sake, she asked about my life back home. I started with my rehearsed answers, abbreviated versions that glossed over the messier details. But midway through, I caught myself and changed course, sharing a more honest account of how my relationship had ended and what had brought me to Tokyo. Hana listened without judgment, her dark eyes thoughtful. "It sounds like you both hurt each other," she said finally. "Sometimes leaving is the kindest thing." Her simple observation stayed with me long after our date ended. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps the cleanest break had been the most compassionate choice for everyone involved. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Subject line simply, "Quarterly Leadership Summit. Your presence requested." I scanned the content, then read it again more carefully, the implications sinking in. Horizon Tech was holding its quarterly leadership summit back home. And as lead developer of the Tokyo AI initiative, my attendance was strongly encouraged. The summit would last 5 days, with my presentation scheduled on day 3. Takashi-san had already approved my travel, the email noted. All that remained was my confirmation. I stared at my computer screen for several minutes before responding. 7 months had passed since I'd left. Enough time to establish a new life, but perhaps not enough to face the old one. "Is everything all right, Chen-san?" Takashi appeared at my office door, concern evident in his expression. "Yes, just reviewing the summit details," I replied, straightening in my chair. "I'll be confirming my attendance today." Takashi nodded, seemingly satisfied, but then hesitated. "This will be your first time returning since your relocation. It can be challenging to revisit a place after significant change." His perceptiveness surprised me. "I'm prepared for it," I said, more confidently than I felt. "Of course." Takashi bowed slightly before leaving. "The project will benefit greatly from your presentation." That evening, I called Ella in London. Our monthly video chats had become an important touchstone, her psychological insight often helping me navigate situations Keiko hadn't yet had time to address. "So, you're going back," she said after I explained the situation. "How do you feel about it?" "Professionally, it's a good opportunity," I replied, deflecting instinctively. Ella's expression made it clear she wasn't accepting that answer. "Alex," I sighed. "I'm anxious about seeing Maya, about running into Julian if he's back in town, about people knowing what happened." "But you'll go anyway," she said. It wasn't a question. "I have to. It's important for the project." Ella nodded. "Then use this as an opportunity, not just professionally but personally. See if you can be present with whatever arises, rather than detaching or escaping." "That sounds suspiciously like something Keiko would say," I observed dryly. Ella laughed. "Great minds! But seriously, Alex, this could be good for you. A chance to measure how far you've come." I spent the following weeks preparing meticulously for my presentation, focusing on the technical content rather than the emotional aspects of returning. I arranged to stay at a hotel downtown, far from my old neighborhood, and scheduled meetings to fill as much free time as possible. Zoe was ecstatic when I told her about my upcoming visit. "I'm taking at least 2 days off work," she declared, "and you're having dinner with Mom and Dad, separately, obviously." "Zoe, I'm there for work," I protested weakly. 5 days is plenty of time for work and family, she insisted. "Besides, you need a buffer in case of any Maya-related awkwardness." I hadn't told Zoe, but I'd already discreetly asked a colleague about Maya's current projects, learning she was unlikely to be at any of the meetings I'd be attending. As for Julian, Zoe had confirmed he was still in Austin with his band. The chances of unplanned encounters seemed minimal. The flight home was long but comfortable in business class, another perk of my new position. I used the time to review my presentation once more, then switched to a Japanese novel Hana had recommended, grateful for the distraction. Arriving felt surreal. The familiar skyline, the same airport corridors, even the particular quality of light. Everything simultaneously familiar and strange, like a vivid dream of a place I'd once known well, Zoe met me at arrivals, throwing her arms around me with characteristic enthusiasm. "You look different," she declared, stepping back to examine me. "It's only been 7 months," I said, but I knew what she meant. Tokyo had changed me in ways both visible and invisible. My wardrobe had evolved to include more tailored pieces, influenced by Japanese business style. I'd lost weight from walking everywhere and adopting a different diet. But the more significant changes were internal, a new thoughtfulness in my interactions, a deliberate presence that therapy was slowly helping me develop. "Different is good," Zoe decided, linking her arm through mine as we headed for the parking garage. "You seem more here, if that makes sense." It did make sense, though I wasn't sure how to respond. Instead, I asked about her work, her apartment, the new boyfriend she'd mentioned in recent emails. She filled the drive to my hotel with updates, allowing me to readjust to being home without addressing the more complicated aspects of my return. The summit began the following morning, and I immersed myself in the familiar rhythm of corporate presentations and networking conversations. Colleagues who had known me before commented on my transformation, though few mentioned my personal life directly. Director Park greeted me warmly, pulling me aside after the opening session. "Tokyo agrees with you," he observed, his eyes assessing me with characteristic sharpness. "Takashi speaks highly of your contributions." "It's been a positive move," I acknowledged. "Thank you for the opportunity." He nodded, seeming pleased. "And personally, have you found what you were looking for?" The directness of his question caught me off guard. "I'm working on it," I replied honestly. "Good." He clasped my shoulder briefly. "That's all any of us can do." 3 days into the summit, my careful planning failed me. I had just finished my presentation on AI integration strategies when Zoe texted, inviting me to join her and some friends for dinner at a new restaurant downtown. After a successful presentation and positive feedback from the executive team, I felt relaxed enough to accept. It wasn't until I arrived at the restaurant that I realized my mistake. The "some friends" Zoe had mentioned included several people from my old social circle, including David and Jen, whose dinner party Maya and I had attended just before everything fell apart. And standing with them at the bar, looking as shocked to see me as I was to see her, was Maya. She had cut her hair short, the bob framing her face in a way that emphasized her cheekbones. She was wearing a deep blue dress I didn't recognize, holding a martini glass that trembled slightly when our eyes met. Zoe appeared at my side, her expression apologetic. "I didn't know she'd be here," she whispered urgently. "Jen invited her last minute. We can leave if you want." I took a deep breath, remembering Ella's advice about being present with whatever arose. "It's fine," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "We're adults. We can handle this." The initial awkwardness was palpable as we were seated, with Maya and I positioned at opposite ends of the long table. Conversation flowed around us, careful to avoid topics that might reference our shared past. I focused on engaging with those seated near me, aware of Maya doing the same at her end of the table. Midway through dinner, during a lull in conversation, Maya looked directly at me. "How's Tokyo?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough to silence the table. "It's good," I replied, matching her calm tone. "Different, but good. The project is going well." She nodded. "I saw your name on the summit agenda. Congratulations on the presentation. I heard it was impressive." "Thank you." I hesitated, then added, "How are you? Work going well?" "Busy as always?" A small smile. "I'm heading the new digital marketing division now." "That's great. You deserved that promotion." The brief exchange seemed to release some of the tension around the table, Conversation resumed, flowing more naturally. I caught Zoe watching us with barely concealed relief. As dinner concluded, I found myself near the coat check at the same time as Maya. We stood in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke. "This wasn't as awful as I thought it would be," she said with a hint of her old directness. I laughed, despite myself. "High praise." She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. Would it be completely weird if we got coffee before you go back? Just to talk?" My instinct was to refuse, to protect the careful distance I'd established, but something in her expression, not hope or romantic intention, but simple human connection, made me reconsider. "Not completely weird," I conceded. "Just moderately weird." "I'll take moderately weird," she said, retrieving her coat. "Text me if you have time." As I watched her leave, I realized I was feeling neither the anger nor the painful longing that had characterized my thoughts of Maya in the months after our breakup. Instead, I felt a quiet curiosity about the person she was becoming, separate from our shared history. Later that night, I texted her suggesting coffee the following afternoon at a neutral location downtown. Her reply came quickly. "See you there at 3. The cafe was busy when I arrived, the afternoon crowd seeking refuge from an unseasonably cold day. Maya was already there, seated at a small table near the window, 2 ceramic mugs steaming in front of her. "Hope you still take it black, with 1 sugar," she said as I slid into the chair across from her. "Some things don't change," I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Thanks." We sat in silence for a moment, the ambient noise of the cafe filling the space between us. Maya looked tired up close, faint shadows beneath her eyes, though her manner was composed. "So," she began finally. "Tokyo." "Tokyo," I echoed with a small smile. "Not where I expected to be a year ago." "Was it the right decision?" The question was asked gently, without accusation. I considered it seriously. "Yes, I think it was. Not the way it happened, but the move itself, it was necessary." Maya nodded slowly. "I've been thinking a lot about necessity, about the differences between what we want, what we need, and what we think we deserve." "Sounds like therapy talking," I observed. "Twice a week for 6 months," she confirmed with a rueful smile. "You?" "Once a week since I arrived in Tokyo. My therapist is painfully insightful." "Isn't that the worst?" Maya's smile faded. "Alex, I need to say something, and I need you to just listen, okay? I've been rehearsing this for months." I nodded, setting down my coffee. Maya took a deep breath. "What I did was inexcusable. Sleeping with Julian, betraying your trust in the worst possible way. There's no justification for it. Not your emotional distance, not my insecurities, not the alcohol. Nothing." Her voice was steady, her gaze direct. "I am deeply, genuinely sorry for the pain I caused you." The simple, unequivocal apology caught me off guard. There were no qualifiers, no attempt to distribute blame or minimize her actions. "Thank you for saying that," I said after a moment. "It means something, hearing it now." "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued. "That's not why I wanted to meet. I just needed you to know that I understand the magnitude of what I did, and I've been working to make sure I never hurt someone like that again." I studied her face, noting the sincerity in her expression, the absence of the defensive posture that had characterized our last painful conversations. "I owe you an apology too," I said finally. "I abandoned our relationship long before you and Julian, before what happened at the party. I was making unilateral decisions, pulling away emotionally, creating distance that left you isolated. That was wrong." Maya's eyes widened slightly, surprised by my acknowledgement. "Thank you," she said softly. That helps. We sipped our coffee in a silence that felt different from the awkward one that had preceded it. More contemplative, less strained. "How's Julian?" I asked finally, surprising myself with the question. Maya's expression turned complicated. "We tried after you left. It was a disaster. Too much guilt, too many ghosts. He moved to Austin a few months ago." Zoe mentioned that. I'm sorry it didn't work out. And strangely, I meant it. Not because I wanted them together, but because I no longer needed them to be miserable. "Don't be," Maya said with unexpected firmness. "It needed to fail. We both had a lot of work to do on ourselves first." She hesitated, then added, "He asked me to tell you he's sorry if I ever saw you again. For what it's worth." I nodded, not quite ready to extend forgiveness to Julian, but no longer consumed by anger either. "Are you seeing anyone in Tokyo?" Maya asked, changing the subject. "Nothing serious," I replied. "I've been on dates, but I'm trying to be more aware of my patterns." "You?" She shook her head. "Taking a break from relationships while I figure out who I am without one. Turns out I had some dependency issues to work through." "Self-awareness looks good on you," I observed, the comment free from sarcasm. Maya laughed. "It's a work in progress. Some days are better than others." We talked for another hour, covering safer topics. Work achievements, mutual friends, my experiences in Japan. As we prepared to leave, Maya hesitated, then reached across the table to touch my hand briefly. "I'm glad you're doing well, Alex. You deserve that." "So do you," I replied, and was surprised to discover I genuinely meant it. Walking back to my hotel after our meeting, I felt lighter somehow, as if a weight I'd been carrying had finally been set down. Not the weight of anger or betrayal. Therapy had already helped me begin to process those, but the heavier burden of unresolved questions, of wondering what I could have or should have done differently. Our conversation hadn't erased the past or magically healed all wounds. Maya and I would never be together again, and even friendship seemed unlikely given our history. But we had managed to acknowledge our mutual humanity, to see each other as flawed people who had both contributed to a painful situation. There was a certain peace in that recognition. That night I called Zoe to tell her about the meeting. "So it was okay?" she asked cautiously. "You're not spiraling or booking an early flight back to Tokyo?" "It was actually good," I told her. "Clarifying, like closing a circle that had been left open." "Look at you, all emotionally mature and stuff," Zoe teased, but I could hear the genuine pride in her voice. Tokyo Alex is growing up. "Trying to," I admitted. "It's harder than coding algorithms, that's for sure." Zoe laughed. "But probably more worthwhile in the long run." After we hung up, I sat on my hotel bed looking out at the city lights, so different from the view from my Tokyo apartment, yet familiar in their own way. For the first time since leaving, I felt no urge to escape this place, no anxiety about the memories it held. I could acknowledge my past without being defined by it. Tomorrow I would attend the final day of the summit. Then I would have dinner with my mother, breakfast with my father the following day, and a final evening with Zoe before flying back to Tokyo. Back to the life I was building, not the one I was running from. The email from Director Park arrived 2 weeks after my return to Tokyo. "Alex, your presentation at the summit was exceptional. Exactly the kind of innovative thinking we hoped to foster with the Tokyo Initiative. The executive team has been discussing the possibility of expanding your role to include oversight of AI development across both offices. This would involve regular travel between Tokyo and headquarters, with the potential for a permanent return if you're interested. Takashi supports this direction, though he would prefer to keep you in Tokyo full-time. Consider the options and let's discuss when I visit next month. Regards, Director Park. 6 months ago, The prospect of returning would have filled me with dread. Now I found myself considering it objectively, weighing professional advantages against personal preferences. My life in Tokyo had developed rhythm and meaning. I had connections here, colleagues who had become friends, my therapist, Keiko, the routine that provided structure without confinement. More importantly, I had begun to understand myself better here, away from the patterns and expectations of my previous life. The distance had given me perspective, allowing me to see more clearly how I had constructed emotional walls long before Maya had breached them. After careful consideration, I drafted a response. Director Park, thank you for the opportunity to expand my role. I'm honored by the confidence you and the executive team have shown in my work. After consideration, I believe I can best serve the company by maintaining my primary base in Tokyo for now, with quarterly visits to headquarters as needed. This allows me to continue the momentum we've built here while still providing guidance for integration across offices. I'm open to revisiting this arrangement in the future as the project evolves. Regards, Alex. Sending the email felt like a declaration not just to Director Park, but to myself. I was choosing Tokyo not as an escape, but as a place where I could continue growing. The distinction mattered. That evening, I had my regular video call with Ella. As soon as her face appeared on screen, she smiled knowingly. Something's different, she observed. You look settled. I told her about the job offer and my decision, about my coffee with Maya, about the strange sense of peace I'd found since returning to Tokyo. It sounds like you're finally living in your life instead of alongside it, Ella said when I finished. I haven't seen you this present since before your parents' divorce. Keiko says something similar, I admitted. That I've been emotionally hovering above my experiences since I was a teenager, never fully inhabiting them. Smart woman, you're Keiko, Ella remarked. So what's next in this inhabiting process? I thought about the question seriously. I'm not sure. Continuing therapy, being more intentional about connections, maybe. I hesitated. Maybe what? Ella prompted. There's someone I've been seeing, Hana. It's been casual so far, but I think I might be ready for something more substantial. If she is... Ella's smile widened. Tell me about her. She's a translator, literary texts mostly. She lived in London for a few years, so we have that in common. She's thoughtful, direct when she needs to be. Calls me out when I start to withdraw. She sounds like exactly what you need, Ella observed. That's the thing, I replied, the realization forming as I spoke. I'm not looking at her in terms of what I need anymore. I'm interested in who she is, what she wants. It feels different. That, my friend, is what growth looks like, Ella said softly. I'm really proud of you, Alex. After we ended the call, I texted Hana, asking if she was free for dinner that weekend. Her response came quickly. I was wondering when you'd ask. Saturday works. But this time I picked the restaurant. Your last choice was too safe. I laughed at her directness, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with embarrassment or discomfort. Hana challenged me in ways that were unfamiliar but welcome, pushing me to try new experiences, to express preferences I would once have kept to myself, to engage more fully with the world around me. Saturday evening found us at a tiny restaurant in a back alley of Shinjuku, where the chef prepared each course in front of just 8 customers seated at a wooden counter. I would never have found this place on my own, nor would I have previously been comfortable with the uncertainty of not knowing what would be served. You're thinking too much again, Hana observed, watching my expression as the chef placed a dish of something unidentifiable before us. Just try it. I did, surprised by the complex flavors, by my capacity to appreciate something so far outside my usual experience. Hana smiled at my reaction, a hint of satisfaction in her dark eyes. Later, as we walked through the neon-lit streets, she slipped her hand into mine, a simple gesture that felt monumental in its implications. We had been seeing each other for months, but had maintained careful physical boundaries, both aware of my need to proceed slowly after everything that had happened. "I had a good time tonight," I said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Me too." She looked up at me, her expression suddenly serious. "Alex, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you ready for this to be more than casual? Because I'm starting to think I am, but I need to know where you stand." The directness of her question would once have triggered my retreat, my instinct to protect myself from potential rejection or pain. But months of therapy and self-reflection had begun to reshape those patterns. "I am," I said, the words coming more easily than I expected. "I want to see where this could go." Hannah studied my face, as if searching for signs of hesitation. "You've been through a lot. I don't want to be a rebound or a distraction." "You're not," I assured her. I paused, considering my words carefully. "You're someone who helps me be present, who challenges me to engage rather than escape. I value that. I value you." Her smile returned, small but genuine. "Good answer. Very therapeutic." "I've had a lot of practice," I admitted with a laugh. As we continued walking, talking about possibilities and preferences for this new phase of our relationship, I felt a profound sense of having crossed some invisible threshold. I was no longer the person who had fled to Tokyo 7 months ago, wounded and wary, nor was I fully healed. Therapy had taught me that healing was an ongoing process, not a destination. But I was present in a way I hadn't been for years, perhaps decades. Present with my choices, my emotions, my connections. Present with the understanding that vulnerability wasn't weakness but courage, that the risk of pain was the price of genuine connection. Back in my apartment, after saying goodnight to Hannah with a kiss that promised more to come, I stood on my small balcony looking out at the Tokyo skyline. The city that had begun as an escape had become, unexpectedly, the place where I had found myself again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for growth or retreat. My patterns wouldn't change overnight. I would still struggle with emotional walls built over decades. But for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was facing forward rather than looking back, choosing engagement rather than escape. It wasn't the ending I had imagined when I'd boarded that plane 7 months ago, bitter and betrayed. It was something better. Not an ending at all, but a beginning. Uncertain and imperfect and alive with possibility.